You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Den säger ja, skramjungen ett min celery.
Welcome everybody back to episode number 10 of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast here at AngryMarks.com, your number one source for pro wrestling and mixed martial arts news and information. I am Rowan Unruh. Follow me on Twitter at Rowan Unruh. I'm joined once again by Mike Poulin. Mike, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. You?
Not too bad. We just tried for the first hour to try to get this thing going, but as far as anyone knows, this is just going smoothly and no technical issues.
The technical issues are lost in the abyss somewhere.
They're lost in the ether. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good.
All right, yeah, I heard that you went to a WWE house show this weekend. I guess give us the Cole's Notes version.
And what I got here is Finn Balor going over Baron Corbin, but then Corbin restarts the match with a no DQ with Corbin winning. We had Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Dana Brooke going over the Riot Squad and Alicia Fox because one of them didn't show up. I know it was Ruby and Liv that was there. I don't forget who the third one is. Sarah Logan wasn't there. Yeah, her. Which is weird because Liv was the one who just had a concussion a few weeks ago.
That doesn't stop her. She's tough.
Yeah. We had Elias going over No Way Jose. We had Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax going over Alexa and Mickey. We had Chad Gable going over Jinder Mahal. Yeah, scraping the bottom of the barrel there. And we had Dean and Seth going over... we had the B team going over the Revival. And Dean and Seth over Dolph and Drew with a disqualification. And then Braun came out and beat up Dolph and Drew at the end.
So it sounds like you had a fun night of sports entertainment.
Yes. Speaking of a not-so-fun night of that.
What was not a fun night of sports entertainment? And I guarantee that this is, my karma, my revenge for making you watch In Your House 4.
And I'm sure we'll see worse shows as we go along.
Yeah. We're looking this week at WCW's Halloween Havoc 1992, which took place on October 25th from the Philadelphia Civic Center, not the Spectrum.
Not the Spectrum.
Because they can't get the Spectrum, and it's a good thing they didn't, because this show in that building would have looked even worse than this was.
Oh boy.
What's the background behind the spin the wheel, make a deal match?
I'm not sure what the background is. I know that Jake Roberts had attacked Sting at a house show in Baltimore, the same one where Ron Simmons won the title. And then they had a 8-man tag at the Clash before this, and then I think they just did vignettes hyping the spin the wheel, make the deal with Cheetah and the Midget and all that stuff.
Have you heard the story of Jake's departure from WWF?
I've heard it on other podcasts, but you can tell it to me again.
So basically what happened was Jake...
Wasn't he supposed to become a booker or something? Or wasn't he didn't he ask to become a booker and they wouldn't let him or something?
After the Randy Savage feud in early 92, he had asked to either take some time off, or he also was promised some sort of backstage job or position. They had actually said, well, no, they had told Bret Hart that Bret was going to be working Jake at SummerSlam that year. Now this was before they had figured out where it was going to be, like in England and all that stuff. So they had told Bret it's going to be Bret and Jake was going to put him over clean.
And Jake didn't like that, I take it.
Well, he didn't. Not only did he not like that, but he didn't like the fact that he wasn't going to be offered the backstage job that he was promised. He also didn't want to do a clean job to Undertaker at WrestleMania, which is why Jake took the tombstone on the floor.
Oh, that's a nasty spot.
Yeah, instead of in the ring, which kind of cheated Undertaker out of kind of a clean win. I mean, it was a clean win, but it wasn't in the middle of the ring. In the interim, he had negotiated a contract with Kip Fry, who was running WCW at the time. And he had negotiated him a pretty sweet deal, but he had 90 days before he could, before that contract would take effect. On day 87, Bill Watts came in and took over. And as part of Bill's cost-cutting measure, he took a look at this contract and said, we're not going to do this. And so Jake probably went from earlier in the year making about $3.5 million a year, including royalties, to signing a contract for about $200,000.
Bill Watts, everybody.
Poor Jake.
And we'll get to more Bill Watts, everybody, as we go through this show.
So the opening of this show, we see Tony and Bruno Sammartino standing on the interview platform, and Bruno is looking completely out of place, and the only thing that would have made this show worse is if Bruce was doing the color.
Or David Sammartino and Eric Watts were wrestling in the opener.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The Battle of the Sons that, never made it.
So our commentators are Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura. I don't know what Jesse was on. He was lucid on this show.
Probably needed something to get through this.
I think he'd had like a dozen 1 hour or 5 hour energies.
If they were making them back then.
So they explain the spin the wheel, make a deal match. And we won't go through all the matches that are listed on this wheel, but it's basically, if you've seen Raw Roulette, this is what it is. They have this great big Wheel of Fortune type thing. There's 12 matches listed.
They should have had Missy Hyatt spin the wheel instead of Jim Ross. She could have been the Vanna White. Instead of having her just backstage being blown off for an interview, which I'm pretty sure was a running gag with her for like 2 or 3 years in that company.
Yeah, so we don't know what type of match this is going to be, which is, by the way, it's a great way to sell a pay-per-view. Telling people that, we want you to pay money, but we're not going to tell you what you're going to get.
Yeah, that's not good.
We get a video package of Cactus Jack training, air quotes, the Barbarian on how to take Ron Simmons' power slam.
Which, it's just Barbarian body slamming random job guys.
Yeah, it was a bunch of geeks body slamming Barbarian. And him no selling.
Which is a good way to put over your number one contender. Also, we have Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham having problems, which is a great idea to give them the belts.
Yeah.
And then have them tease problems the next week.
When they were putting this show together, how the tag team title situation was going to be, Terry Gordy had quit the promotion that morning. So the scheduled tag team title match went from Gordy and Williams defending the titles as champions against the Steiner brothers.
Of course, also Scott Steiner had won the TV title like a week before this show.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So it goes to, then it goes to Rhodes and Wyndham versus Gordy and Williams, and then to Williams and Austin. So when this card was being put together, the plan was for the Steiners to win the titles here, even though they had already made it known that they're not renewing their contracts.
WCW, everybody.
In the meantime, Rick tore his pec muscle, and he was inactive basically until his contract expired. Also in the meantime, in true WCW fashion, they decided to put the World Television title on Scott Steiner, and then they proceeded to remove him from all host shows, and still knowing that he wasn't going to renew his contract. So, he wasn't on this show either.
We're going to get enough of that on this show as well. We have... Also on the original card was supposed to be the rematch between Austin and Steamboat, which they should have kept this that tag title match. You could have had Austin and Steamboat. You could have had probably Douglas and Pillman, because they had a match that ended with Pillman taking a nasty bump on the concrete, the belly to belly on the concrete on Saturday night, like a few weeks before this. Because that's a Bill Watts idea. We're going to have no ring mats.
We need to cut costs, and my God, did they cut costs on this show. The production value of this show, it looked like an old MSG show. The lighting was bad. There were no mats on the ground. And you compare this to a WWF pay-per-view from the same time frame, it's night and day. It's like you're looking at, New Japan in 2018 versus, like world class,
1985, 1983.
In their dirtiest heyday.
Maybe world class or Mid-South or something like that.
This show looked so ghetto. And did you see the dark match on this show?
No.
If you can, okay, Eric Watts. And
Oh God.
Teaming up with Van fucking Hammer.
The heavy metal Van Hammer who hung around WCW forever and a half.
They defeated Vinny Vegas and Diamond Dallas Page. Two WWE Hall of Famers. This match went 12 minutes.
I feel like that's a TV, that's a syndicated TV main event.
12 minutes? That's 11 and a half minutes too long.
Or at least 5.5 minutes longer than it should be. And the wrong guys went over.
No.
That's a syndicated TV main event where the heels go over.
We were entering the Eric Watts Protection Agency era.
And yet somehow Papa Bill couldn't put him on the main show.
Oh God. Okay, opening match on the pay-per-view, 6-man tag team. The Z-Man, Tom Zank. What a fine, handsome gentleman that Z-Man is.
That jobber Johnny Gunn.
Also known as Sal Sincere, if you're...
he loves you all.
1997 WWF. And a young, upstart, babyface, good-looking guy from that would be super popular in the Philadelphia area, Shane Douglas. And they're taking
I wonder what would happen to that guy.
I don't know. He never made it in this town. So they're taking.
And they would take on the mixture of the Horsemen, the Freebirds, and the Midnight Express.
Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, and Michael P.S. Hayes. Now, on paper, this should have been pretty good. And Ross keeps mentioning throughout the night that these 3 young, hot baby faces are part of the new WCW youth movement. And
well, that youth movement is shit in the bed because these faces are not getting over.
We've heard the fucking term youth movement about as much as we hear the first ever all-women's pay-per-view today. So they were pushing this youth movement. So we have all 3 guys who are young and muscular.
How many times did WCW try to push a youth movement?
At least once every 6 months, I think. Every administration that came
about as often as they were switching presidents at this point.
Right. So we have they're taking on a heat machine in Michael Hayes and 2 wrestling masters. So we're in Philadelphia. You can fill in the blanks yourself. These fans did not like these babyfaces at all. And
nope.
You can't really call these fans heel fans because this was really the only match that the heels were cheered.
Right. It's just that they like the established guys better.
All right.
Which is perfectly fine.
So Johnny Gunn and Arn Anderson start things off with Arn pounding him in the corner. Gunn comes back with a really bad-looking drop kick. The Z-Man hits one of his own. I guess I'm in Canada, so I should be calling him the Z-Man.
They all the faces hit drop kicks, and for some reason Jesse misses his cue to complain about there not being a tag like he did in every WWF tag match ever.
Eaton comes in.
There was no tag, Jim Ross.
Eaton comes in, and I don't know who he had. I think he had Shane in the corner, but he laid in this stiff right hand, and the place just goes crazy. That was
Bobby Eaton is an underrated worker, an underappreciated worker.
His worked right hand was the best spot on this whole show. Bobby's punches were fantastic.
Yep.
They tag Hayes, who gets cheered because he's a master of playing to the crowd. Shane comes in to work on Hayes' arm and is booed in the process, which isn't something you'd expect to see in Philly, but I guess this was still early.
Hayes is the strategist for Anderson Eaton that was hired by Paulie Dangerously, who's on his way at the door at this point.
Yeah, I think Hayes was usually just doing color commentary on some of the syndicated shows, but they brought him in to work this match.
Yeah, got to fill a spot somehow, I suppose.
There's a hot tag for the babyfaces, back to the Z-Man, who, again, these people just hate. He hooks a leg bar, and then Jesse starts ranting about Shane Douglas probably being a right-wing Republican.
Who cares?
Unnecessary information at this point.
Yes.
Zank hooks a sleeper on Anderson, but it's quickly countered. Back to Hayes, who pounds away and hooks another chinlock. Eaton comes in but leaves quickly with a blind tag to Arn. Arn just kills Zank with a clothesline, and the place erupts again.
Yes, they pop huge.
Even Jesse is stunned by this, and he doesn't stun easily.
Look at the response Arn Anderson's getting, Jim Ross.
There's another hot tag that brings Shane and Anderson in, but Eaton cheap shots Douglas with a knee to stop the comeback. Again, getting another pop from the audience. Eaton drops a top rope knee drop onto the ankle, and Douglas had legitimately hurt his ankle 6 days prior to TV taping, so why not do more damage to it? Shane turns it over, and he gives an atomic drop to Anderson, but they bonk heads. There's another hot tag to Johnny Gunn, and everything breaks down, and Gunn hits a Thez press on Hayes to get the pin at 11 minutes and 2 seconds.
What a way to open the show.
Crowd is shitting on these baby faces. If this had been anywhere else other than Philadelphia, this would have been a great opener. But,
yep.
You had to know.
Oh, by the way, Rick Rude, who's scheduled to work 2 matches, is only going to work 1.
Yeah, so they had, multiple weeks to come up with an angle for this, but it was another blatant bait and switch. We get Missy Hyatt backstage trying to get the scoop regarding Rick Rude, and Harley Race goes into Rude's locker room, and when Missy tries to sneak in, she gets pushed out by a...
You will not get in this locker room for God's green earth!
She gets pushed out by a large mastodon-type arm, which is foreshadowing. We get Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Brian Pillman, and again, this should be awesome here. Pillman is a heel here, and he would hook up with Steve Austin pretty soon after this. Cause
they were already teaming up on the TV. They teamed up on Saturday night before this.
Yeah, they weren't an established team, though. We would still be a couple more weeks before we get the Hollywood Blondes.
Yeah, which was a great almost year run for them. When we'll talk about that team if we get some 93 shows. So.
Yeah, mid 93 tags with these guys, they were pretty good. They had some good battles with Steamboat and Douglas.
And Arn and Rick.
Mm-hmm. So the fans have no problem cheering for Steamboat, so the crowd's back to normal here. You notice we had 2 very well-known fans in the front row.
Hat Guy.
We had ECW Hat Guy, and sitting 2 seats over from him was Vladimir in a WBF tank top.
WBF.
Which later on in the show, it's like, wow, he had a change of clothes, and he was forced to cover that up with a WCW crew t-shirt. So
I'm in the crew, even though I was wearing a WBF shirt earlier in the match.
Glad to know that other promotionals t-shirts were also banned in WCW.
Yep.
They start going back and forth. Pillman throws him over the top rope. Why would you ever throw Ricky Steamboat over the top rope? You know what he's going to do.
The spot that Shawn Michaels will steal years later.
Yeah, so he'll
skins the cat.
He'll always skin the cat. I feel sorry for that poor cat.
It's like trying to powerbomb Billy Kidman.
Oh, God. Yeah. Steamboat plays possum and rams Pillman's face into the mat to take over. Dragon busts out the arm drag armbar combination. Pillman gets backdropped and slammed a few times, so he just pokes Steamboat in the eye to take over. See? Being evil pays off.
The eye poke of doom.
Steamboat is like, screw this, getting beat up, and he just starts choking Pillman. Pillman blasts him in the back of the head when Steamboat had his back turned to take over. There's a head scissors that gets a 2 count, and Pillman just starts choking away on the ropes a bit. The Dragon blocks a superplex, but jumps into a dropkick for a 2. Pillman's starting to get frustrated because he can't put Steamboat down, so Ricky hits the Russian leg sweep to put both guys down.
Yep.
There's a sleeper, and Dragon is in trouble. Steamboat falls into the corner to ram Brian's head into the buckle to escape. Pillman starts running, but he catches Steamboat coming back in with a knee lift. There's a crossbody off the middle rope, gets 2 for Pillman. And the finish comes. Steamboat goes up and hits a top rope, a sunset flip for a 2. Pillman counters, but then Steamboat counters the counter into the sunset flip for the win at 10 minutes and 25 seconds.
Good match. Could have been a bit longer.
It was a really well-paced match between, you take a talented babyface and a talented heel, and you put them together, and by God, the idea works.
Steamboat has his Dragon music and not the Family Man music that he would have from the Slam Jam album that was coming out pretty soon after this show.
I was hoping he would have that,
Ultimo Dragon theme?
No, the The one he used in WWE back in the day. The one that
the one that Michael Jordan used.
Yeah, that's the one. The one, yeah, when Chicago Bulls did their intros in the 90s.
Nope.
So yeah, those two worked really well together, as you would expect them to do. Both guys looked really crisp the whole way through, and the crowd reacted well to it. So this was probably the best match on the show. Good stuff here. Yes.
Next thing.
We get
no DQ, Vader and Nikita.
Before this, we get the announcement that Masachono, the NWA champion, has selected Kensuke Sasaki as his referee. Harley Race will be the other one. So, I don't know why this was so surprising. Bill Watts has some announcements. He says that Terry Gordy has been fired for breach of contract.
Which we talked about a minute ago.
He just left that morning. And Steve Austin will be replacing him in the tag title match tonight. Also, Rick Rude has, quote, filed an injunction, whatever the hell that means. So, he will have a surrogate. Vader will substitute for him in the U.S. title defense against Nikita Koloff. So, if this was the storyline going in, they had at least 2 weeks of TV to get this angle over. This was dumb.
Imagine being the people who bought this show and all the switches and everything else.
Was it any shock? And the shocking thing is, this show still did a 0.9 buy rate, which for them at this time period was absolutely wonderful. So from a financial standpoint, this show did great, but as far from a creative standpoint, this shit the bed.
Yeah. And there's going to be 2 refs in this match. You can smell the clusterfuck coming.
These fans had no idea who Kensuke Sasaki was. The only thing they knew was that he was a short, pudgy, stocky Japanese guy with a sweet, sweet mullet.
Yeah, well, that's later. Next up is Vader and Nikita in a no DQ match where they don't really, other than using a chair, they don't really do anything to break any rules, really.
Yeah, so this is for the U.S. title. Rick Rude is the actual champion, but Vader is subbing for him.
We don't get the Vader theme. We get a overdub of a theme.
We get the Vader theme at the finish, though.
Yeah.
Whoops! Oh, spoiler alert! Vader wins.
Of course. This is also pretty much Nikita's last appearance in WCW.
Yeah, Vader hits him with this really hard, stiff clothesline that knocks Koloff down, and in the process, that herniated a disc in his neck. So between that and the power bomb that he took, which
looked very kind of sloppy.
It looked really bad. He landed, hard on his side and his shoulder, and that fucked him up, for good. This was his last match. He went into retirement after this. Koloff hits a crossbody to the back. That's something I've never seen before.
I try to get him down somehow.
Vader goes into mauling mode. He's running Koloff over, sending him to the floor. There's a really hard chair shot. We go back in. Vader hits a powerbomb, and this was pretty much, Koloff didn't get a whole lot of offense in here. This was pretty much...
It's a 12-minute squash match.
So considering this was no DQ, there was a total of, just that one chair shot that would have fit that gimmick, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to this.
And there were countouts though, but there was no disqualification.
We get Teddy Long interviewing Steve Williams squared. So Williams is back there, and all he says is he's happy that Steve Austin is his partner, and that's it. And Austin says nothing.
And then we get a Dustin and Barry promo where Dustin says nothing.
We're supposed to be where the story is. Dustin and Barry Windham have been having problems, and they've been arguing. They've been having shoving matches.
Marital problems.
It was trouble in paradise, but there was absolutely no evidence of that in this match.
Nope. And this is an okay match. It's a little long.
This went way too long, I thought. Windham and Rhodes are defending here. This is actually the unified tag titles, but, who cares
For some
about
reason.
stuff like that?
For some reason. Why are they unified? Who'd they unify with?
The NWA tag titles.
Who held those?
Well, Williams and Gordy held them up until about a month prior.
Oh, that's right, yes.
And then Windham and
WCW title lineage.
They went on TV while in typical WCW fashion, their TV tapings already had Windham and Rhodes holding the titles even before this match aired. So.
WCW.
What? This is why you don't pre-tape 6 weeks in advance, unless you're NXT, but you make it work there.
Or Impact, which they don't do so much anymore, but...
Oh, they had their days.
Yeah.
So, Austin is in purple here, and no knee pads, which is weird to see. Williams starts out with Dustin, and it's time to talk about football.
Are you ready for some football?
Appropriately enough, they both get down in 3-point stances, and they collide with each other back and forth, but Williams suckers him into a clothesline and takes over.
Jim Ross is mad because his team lost in college football the day before.
And Jesse's just ribbing him. It's like, why did Kansas beat Oklahoma so badly? And JR was having none of Jesse's bullshit on this show.
I don't think they work together so well. This isn't Jesse and Gorilla working together.
No, or Jesse and Vince.
Nope.
So they fight over a wrist lock.
Or Jesse and Tony the next year.
Yep. So they fight over a wrist lock, and neither guy is able to take advantage of it. The fans are chanting, "We want Flair." Jesse talks about his time.
Wrong company for right now.
Yeah. But hey, they did want Flair, and November 90.
They would get him a little bit later on.
Yeah. Jesse talks about him tagging with Adrian Adonis and how they didn't get along in the ring, but they did in the ring. So
no, they didn't get along out of the ring. I'm guessing Jesse didn't approve of Adrian's lifestyle.
But hey, back in the day, wrestlers who became commentators actually talked about their careers and used those stories to make points about the matches they're trying to commentate on.
Hey, it's amazing what you do when you do that.
It's not that hard. Austin works on the leg, but that doesn't work out so well. Rhodes charges into a boot, but he comes right back with a lariat and takes over and gets a 2. Wyndham comes in. Lots of clotheslines in this match.
2 Texans in a match where they throw a lot of clotheslines. You don't say.
If you're a Texan, it's a lariat.
Only if you're Stan Hansen or JBL.
They slug it out, but Wyndham misses a charge and lands on the floor. There's a corner splash that puts Dustin down, and there's a Boston Crab. That gets followed by a body vice from Austin, but even an interfering Wyndham can't break that up. Dustin uses the ropes to get free, and we get the always cool-looking back bridge into a backslide spot for 2.
Yep.
Dustin tries to come back against Williams, but Dr. Death just casually takes him down with an amateur move. It's at this point where Rhodes is busted open, and Williams is starting to go after his eye like a maniac, but that was an injury that happened a couple days prior, which just got reopened. Austin slaps on a chin lock, which is really the first rest hold of the match, and we're probably about 20 minutes into this.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's go right here to the finish. There's a
pin. There's a ref bump.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. So Williams hooks a chin lock, and there's an announcement that we have 5 minutes left in the match. It was a 30-minute time limit. Austin.
Thank you, Gary Michael Capetta.
Thanks, Gary. You're the man. Austin drops a double axe with 4 minutes to go. He hooks on a half crab, which is kind of stupid at this point.
Yes, because you should be doing high-impact moves in the last 5 minutes.
Dustin gets taken down again at 3 minutes left, but the challengers don't at all seem interested in going for the kill. Wyndham gets the tag, but the referee doesn't see it. Then there's a replacement ref. Williams hits a clothesline for the pin on Wyndham out of nowhere. And they start celebrating, but he's not the legal man. So, in a Dustin Rhodes match, we get a dusty finish. And then Williams tries to pin Dustin tries to pin Steve Williams, but he's not legal either.
Was this Dr. Deathlot's appearance as well?
I know
the
that
WCW?
Williams and Gordy were being courted by New Japan. But they refused to do any sort of business with any company that had WCW ties, and so they were both of them were very loyal to All Japan. That's where Gordy went.
Yeah.
So everything breaks down. We have a minute left. Dustin gives Austin a tombstone with 30 seconds to go, and both guys are down. Time runs out, and all of them are just standing around, which is odd, but the rest was pretty good. So
yeah.
I'm not exactly cool with this finish, but
the Jesse Ventura, like the ref bump and then the other ref and then the fall, and then Jesse Ventura's like, the Williams and Austin should be the champions. Because there was a fall, but Wyndham was not legal. And Dustin was.
I like the ending sequence with that false finish because it was the right call if you like consistent rules. And the rest of it was pretty good. It was still, kind of a very extended formulaic tag match, and, all these guys are all really talented, but Wyndham and Rhodes would go on to lose the titles to Steamboat and Douglas less than a month after this.
At the Clash,
there's a segment with Vader, Race, and Paul Lee being interviewed by Tony, and Paul's basically just taking credit for the success.
And Medusa's here.
Medusa comes out and she graciously thanks Harley Race and Vader for defending Root's title, and then out of nowhere, Paul Lee just says, "I'm sick of you. You're fired. You're just a woman. I'm a man. I'm better
I'm
than
a
you."
man.
He's a man.
He's a real man's man. Oh, wait, that's somebody else.
So he basically called her every sort of derogatory name that was cool in 92 but would never go over today. He calls her a bitch. She calls him an asshole. Apparently they both got legitimately fined for that.
And I guess they're Dangerously or Heyman, whatever you want to call him, says that calls her a hooker, I guess, at some point in there as well.
Right. Your job is to take care of Rick Rude's every need, and the only reason you're here is because the other hooker was busy.
Oh, boy. 1992, everybody.
Oh, Paul. So she levels him with a high kick and just starts destroying him. And at this point, even Vader and Race were still on the interview platform. They're like, "Fuck, I'm out of here." And they take off.
We've done our job. We're leaving.
And the place erupts, and Jesse is freaking out. And this was awesome in so many ways. It brought the crowd up, out of that coma from that 30-minute tag match from just before. And then we get
setting up Medusa against Paulie for the Clash
with one hand tied behind his back.
Yep. And then we get Chono and Rude, which is another match that's about probably 5 to 10 minutes too long.
No, we get Sting determining what match he's going to have.
Oh boy.
I know you don't want to talk about this, you're just trying to move on. Okay. So Sting's opponent is Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, you ask any wrestling fan, what is one of Jake Roberts' best qualities?
Storytelling?
Exactly. His talking. His interviews. Why
isn't he out here doing an interview?
He was nowhere near a microphone on this whole show. Tony came out. He has a microphone in hand.
It's Sting! Wait, that's a few years after this.
They bring up the big wheel. They bring the big, what's that, a big lever to pull. Sting comes out.
And unfortunately, an anvil does not fall from the sky.
Sting comes out. Sting also doesn't do any sort of interview. Tony's just sort of standing there with his dick in his hand. He doesn't know what's going on because no one told him anything, which is typical for that type of
All
management.
right, Sting, you're gonna spin this wheel and it's gonna come up, and when it ends, it's gonna have a stipulation, and that's what your match is gonna be. Yay, that's what you get paid for tonight.
So Sting comes out, he pulls the lever, the wheel spins for days, and it lands on a coal miner's glove match.
All the gimmicks, all the stipulations you could have had.
Out of all the hundreds of coal miner's glove matches that you've seen, Mike, what is your favorite all-time coal miner's glove match?
Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Ted DiBiase from Mid-South, which is the coal miner's glove, steel cage tuxedo, whatever the hell, loser leaves town, street fight, cage match. Mid-South, everybody!
How many gimmicks can you get in on one match?
I don't know, but somewhere a young Vince Russo was having an erection just thinking about that match.
So this was one of those moments in WCW where I just shook my head, facepalm, because this is probably the worst possible choice they could have made. Somehow this segment took like 6 minutes. Both guys went on interviews after this saying that they're trying to tell us that they were told that the wheel was not gimmicked and that this was a shoot.
Oh shit!
Even though
shoot, we would have come up with a better step.
The wheel spun and spun and spun at a rapid pace and then immediately pretty much stopped on coal miner's glove. So don't tell me this was not God, they really don't think too much of us.
No. WCW, everybody.
And speaking of people, and speaking of not thinking too much of the fans, then they give us this. The NWA title match. Rick Rude challenging Masahiro Chono.
Because
these two had an awesome match in Japan in the tournament final where Chono won the title. So this had potential, right?
Yeah, but in true WCW fashion, you have to have two referees, which means it's going to end in a mess. You're going to have a way too long match after you just had a 30-minute match. You're going to have another 25-minute match.
Medusa comes out with Rude, making him the babyface kind of after that previous segment.
Rude does not have his mustache anymore.
Jesse says because he wanted to cut down on his speed or something like that.
0.5 pounds of it. And
how long did it take Gary Cappetta to explain the coin flip?
Endless.
He was explaining to this crowd what the coin flip was, as if no one had ever heard of a coin flip or the ramifications thereof.
All you have to say is you flip the coin, and whatever it lands on, that's the referee. That's the referee for the match. That's all you have to say. You don't have to spend 10 minutes explaining it.
He explained that Rick Rude won the coin toss, so his representative referee, Harley Race, would be in the ring.
Of course the heel wins the coin toss.
Then Gary had to explain that Kensuke Sasaki, the Japanese representative, will be on the floor. Jeez. Fuck! You don't say!
Nope. You don't say. In other news, you're killing the crowd with all this shit.
I was reaching for the whiskey at this point.
You're killing the crowd with all this shit. Between this and the Sting segment and all that, you're killing the crowd that you heated up with the Medusa Heyman angle with the last, 15 minutes of this shit.
I was cursing this promotion. I was cursing you for making me watch this.
Oh boy, don't get Papa Shango involved in this. I don't want to be bleeding motor oil from my head now.
These two had this match served as a great example of what was wrong with the NWA. Chono was a great wrestler. I don't think anyone that knows what they're talking about is going to dispute that. Chono was 29 years here, and he's in the prime of his career. That being said, I'd be surprised if 2% of the audience knew who this guy was.
And Rude was in his prime at this point, too. He had just had the great series with Steamboat earlier in the year.
He was having great matches with Steamboat. He was going to...
he had great matches with Sting.
With Dustin. He was one of their star guys. And
you made him look like shit here.
I don't know if he was injured or what, but... He was.
Well, that's what would keep him out of the Ron Simmons match at Starrcade.
He was just moving slow. I mean, and from what I can find, this was Chono's first televised singles match in the U.S. ever. And
way to make it disappointing, WCW.
This match had been hyped on TV and all that, and the fans are just supposed to buy into this guy as being a world champion without ever seeing him wrestle. That's never going to work.
You should have had him against, Scotty Flamingo or some lower-level guy on TV before this. Scotty Flamingo, Vinny Vegas, DDP.
One of these.
I don't know if he was there at this point.
Terrence Taylor?
Or whatever they were calling him this month. Greg the Hammer Valentine, who was randomly in WCW around this time.
So the fans want, they start chanting, "We want Flair again." Rude starts talking trash in English, and then Jesse says he's from Minnesota. All Minnesotans speak Japanese as a second language. That's a lie.
I think they might be Scandinavian. Or maybe that's just Betty White's character in the Golden Girls, but in any event, that's a lie, Jesse.
Chono takes him to the mat, and by God, let the rest holds begin.
Endless chin lock.
Rest hold after rest hold. This is just a long stretch of laying on the mat in a hold that's not going to get a submission and that bores the audience and myself to death.
You're really keeping the audience invested in this show.
Lots of chin locks, lots of arm bars. Chono tries to slap on the STF, but Rude blocks, and so instead Rude just does the leg part of that. At about the 15-minute mark, we finally get a move that's not a rest hold. Rude gives him a pile driver, but Chono gets his feet on the ropes. Rude, likely out of boredom, fires off with some more rights, and another chin lock.
Chin lock city.
Jim Ross is so bored that he starts talking about Rick Rude's arm wrestling career. If that chin lock isn't your cup of tea, here's a sleeper instead.
And appropriately enough, in a few weeks, WCW would be doing an arm wrestling tournament on syndicated TV.
Oh, and I looked ahead. You know who won that tournament?
Van fucking Hammer. The only push he ever got.
What was his name in MIA?
Was it Major Stash?
Corporal Stash or something?
No, Corporal Cajun, Lieutenant Loco, Major Stash, AWOL, and General
Erection.
Huge Erection. Thank you, Vince Russo. Yes, Van Hammer, one of those guys that was around WCW for fucking ever and did nothing.
Chono accidentally charges, he tries to charge at Rude with the Mafia kick, but he kicks Race, and Race takes a great bump to the floor. I'll give him that. He then sends Rude into the corner where Rude lands on both referees, but it's over the top rope, and it's a disqualification.
But there's no ref. And here comes the clusterfuck, everybody.
Chono goes for a pinfall. Sasaki runs in, does a 3 count. No one is cheering. No one knows what's going on. Harley Race comes back in and said, no, Rude got disqualified. Okay, so either way, Chono's still going to win. If you're a heel, why are you disqualifying the heel?
Especially since Chono was the one who sent Rude to the floor.
Right.
You should be disqualifying him. You can't screw over the Japanese guy.
But you can't award Rude the title either.
So why book this match?
The match...
Or why, or at least why have it at a title match when neither guy can really lose?
22 minutes and 23 seconds of the suckiest minutes that ever were minutes. This is why the NWA died. We had a boring match with a guy that no one cared about with a bogus ending. Why am I supposed to care about this shit?
Although the NWA is having a rebirth because they just had their 70th anniversary last week.
Oh, God, the lineage. Wow.
With Nick Aldis as the new champion. Yay!
I would have murdered someone to watch Nick Aldis instead of these two guys.
Would have been more entertaining.
Oh, WCW
Speaking
title
of
match.
wanting to see anything but the title match, your only ever Black World Champion, Ron Simmons, and his only title defense one of his only title defenses on pay-per-view, not a main event, against the Barbarian, who for some reason gets a title shot.
The guy with the antlers. And the fur pants. But no, he was in full Powers of Pain gear here. For some reason, WCW decided that the big names could go after the NWA title, but the WCW title was treated like a mid-card joke. And I guess Bill Watts deciding, hey, having a black champ worked in Mid-South with JYD, that's going to...
Or just trying to cover up his racism.
That's going to definitely bring in the black demographic. No, this was a disaster. He was a disaster.
He either did what you said, or he's covering up his closet racism, which would come out, which would lead to him getting fired a few months after this.
It wasn't too... it was very obvious, but no one cared about this match either, and I can almost guarantee that they're not going to get the fans to care based on how good this match is going to be.
You couldn't have put Cactus in this match instead?
No, Cactus he had some type of injury.
Or Tony Atlas, who was there for some reason.
Oh, God.
The two black guys facing each other.
Saba Simba.
He looks like he's dancing on hot coals, Vince.
Simmons comes out with this huge entourage, which kind of makes him look like a heel. There was like 100 security guards, and Teddy Long was holding the belt up as if this was a UFC entrance.
Holla, 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 I'm gonna take the belt and I'm gonna take your money, player. And then I'm gonna book you in a tag match.
Barbarian rams him into the ring post and then into the railing, as this is already dragging and we're less than 5 minutes in. Ron hits the absolute worst sunset flip of all time for a 2. Barbarian hooks on the Cobra Clutch, which is more like an armpit claw. But the best part about this was Jesse trying to pronounce whatever JR was calling it, the Shinomaki or something.
A Shinonumaki.
Shinonumaki. It's basically the $1 Million Dream, but Barbarian didn't have his left hand where it should be, and it just looked like he was hugging him from behind. And
the only thing that would have made that Jesse trying to say it like that would be Dusty on commentary trying to say Shinonumaki.
I think it's a shin on my maki.
And now Dusty sounds like Foghorn Leghorn. I say it's a Shinonumaki, boy.
Simmons, where were we here?
Simmons wins with a power slam.
He gets kicked in the back of the head, sends him to the floor. Barbarian tries to go for the top rope headbutt, and Simmons is literally on the opposite side of the ring, but he's nice enough to do like the log roll for 3 revolutions, so he can be in position for Barbarian to hit the headbutt.
I mean, what a giving guy.
Oh. So yeah, then just Simmons power slams him out of nowhere off the ropes for the win. 12 minutes and 41 seconds.
Ron Simmons wins, and they're setting up a Ghetto Odds match at the Clash. Bill wants everybody.
The Barbarian just co-main evented a pay-per-view.
Let that sink in.
This was treated like a worthless match, and that's being very generous. It came off like a bad main event of a C-level show, which goes a long way to explain the trouble this company was having at this time. This was just awful.
Your first black world champion, his first defense on pay-per-view. It's not against the guy he beat for the title a few months before this, who gets grandfathered in as a sub. It's not even against a guy who was feuding with in Cactus Jack because he's hurt. Who could they find? The Barbarian. You couldn't even put him against Rude?
Didn't they, just pick his name out of a hat? Literally?
Yes. Yeah. The first black world champion.
And you know what? I guarantee you, based on the booking of WCW at this time, that was probably a shoot draw. They didn't gimmick it at all.
I think I've heard that it was a shoot draw.
Can you imagine if they had picked, I don't know.
Marcus Alexander Bagwell?
Odd champion.
Firebreaker Chip. Why did Mr. and Mrs. Firebreaker name their son Chip, Tony?
God. And then
Terrible.
Barbarian would go on to work an actual program with him on the house show loop.
Yep. And then they would have a 3-on-2 handicap match where they would debut Scorpio because Simmons' partner for that match walked out.
Who was his partner supposed to be?
Robbie Walker.
Who the fuck is Robbie Walker?
Not Bobby Walker, the jobber, but Robbie Walker, who had 2 matches in the company and then left.
Thing and Jake the Snake Roberts. Clover's glove. The announcers talk about that they have anti-venom in the back.
That snake better be devenomized. It better be.
And then Jake doesn't even come out with the snake.
And he also comes out to the Hollywood Blondes theme.
He does. He comes out to Steve Austin's Hollywood Blondes theme, which, well, maybe at least that's how they put it on the network. Was this how they, what the original one was?
I don't know. I didn't see much WCW in 92. I didn't start watching WCW until probably mid-93, maybe early 94.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we get the
I think the first WCW I remember was Vader powerbombing Cactus Jack on the concrete.
Okay, so
Which
you
is the
started about a
famous
year.
angle.
Yeah, you started about a year before WCW syndication was available in my area.
Yeah.
The coal miner's glove, which is nothing more than a welding glove with
On a pole, everybody.
with a piece of duct tape.
Pole matches fucking suck.
And this pole looked like it was 15 feet high.
How the fuck? Pole matches suck. You can't just spot on the pole. It's not like a ladder.
If I were Sting, I would stand aside. I would guide Jake, say, "Go ahead, climb the pole," and then sit and try to watch 39-year-old Jake the Drunk Roberts try to climb this pole.
It'd probably be more entertaining than the match was. We got time. Just keep climbing that pole and you'll get the glove eventually.
This is a non-sanctioned match, which means Sting can do whatever he wants and there'll be no repercussions, and Jake can do whatever he wants and nobody will care. Well, guess what? No one cared.
And they really didn't do anything in this match.
Sting misses a drop kick. Jake goes after the back. They go to the floor. Sting runs Jake's arm into the post a couple of times. Sting goes for the glove. Jake makes the save and he hits a suplex. Jake tries to get the glove and he gets crotched on the ropes. A bunch of shit happens. Stinger splash. Jake finally hits the DDT with his bad arm, but Sting completely no-sells it. He runs. So he gets hit with the DDT. He rolls to the apron. He then runs across the apron. He grabs the pole and he swings around it, which was kind of a cool-looking spot.
Yep. And then the end spot is Cactus running out with a snake bag, and Jake gets the glove, but nobody, I don't think anybody even fucking used the glove.
No, Cactus ran out with Jake's Cobra, and Sting got the glove. But then Sting knocked the snake into Jake's face, and it, quote, bites him, rendering Jake dead, allowing Sting to get the pin at 10 minutes and 34 seconds, and the actual coal miner's glove was never actually used. Great way to put over a gimmick match.
The gimmick is never used.
Oh. Is this the worst show we've ever done?
Probably.
Like not only the pay-per-view, but this podcast. This is the worst podcast we've ever done.
What can I say? It's WCW, everybody.
The glove meant nothing. It was the dumbest possible gimmick that they could have gone with. Jake, fortunately, would check himself into rehab and probably miss about a month of advertised house shows, which was fine because if he was smart, he wanted to get the stink off of this company.
And he would end up in Smoky Mountain.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea of how real the snake bite was, Jake had the snake on his cheek. He pulls it away. He looks at it. He puts it right back to where it was biting him, like it's somehow
it's a snake
some
kiss.
Sort of parody of a bad horror movie.
The snake kiss.
Jake is poisoned by the venom, and Cactus is trying to pull Jake to the back and escape ever being linked to this show. And then we get about 5 minutes of wrap-up to end the show. Fucking dreadful.
Oh, boy. Not good.
I've heard of shows...
WCW failed concepts. And speaking of a WCW failed concept, their next pay-per-view is Battle Bowl.
And they made all sorts of matches for that, but then that just got changed. Shocker.
Well, no, how can they make matches for Battle Bowl when the idea is that it's random tag partner matches? I know they had Simmons and Rude scheduled.
Starrcade wasn't going to be Battle Bowl originally. They were going to set up for another Chono Rude match. That didn't happen. They were going to have Dustin and Wyndham in some sort of blow-off match because they were going to break up that tag team.
That didn't happen.
I believe Austin was going to work with, I think, Johnny B. Bad, who was coming off an injury. That didn't happen. And they were going to go...
The King of Cable finals.
And King of Cable, yeah. They ended up...
We will have to talk about that Starrcade one day, but I'm not sure if it'll be anytime soon.
Oh, no, it's not going to be anytime soon.
Because I'm going to pick a Starrcade for December, but I don't know if it's going to be that one.
The last 3 matches on this show were absolutely dreadful. The
The first half of the show was actually decent.
It was promising, but
and then the last 3 matches happened.
Starting with Chono and Rude, and it went downhill from there. It was long and dull. WCW in 1992 had a reputation, and if you watch the show, you can see why. I want to say the best out of the worst here was Steamboat and Pillman, but that match is not worth it to watch the rest of the show. So don't watch
this show. And speaking of shows, what's your next pick for whenever we do another show?
Okay, well, sorry, I got to cleanse my palate here just a second.
Oh boy, drink.
Get the stench of Bill Watts WCW out of my system for at least a few weeks here.
For a few months. I definitely want to do Super Brawl 3 when we get to February because I want to talk about Watts getting fired and all that stuff. And that's actually set to be a good show.
I think we deserve at least that.
Yeah. So when we get to February, we're definitely doing the Super Brawl 3.
Well, because we're going to be heading into November, which is Survivor Series season.
Yep.
I figured it's the 11th month. So we're going to go back to the 11th month of 2011 and check out the 2011 Survivor Series, which is headlined with a tag match of Miz and R-Truth taking on the superstar team of John Cena and his mystery partner, The Rock.
Which is setting up for Mania 28.
This is another show that I have never seen before. And
I've only seen when it happened on pay-per-view.
Yeah, so between 2005 and 2012, my viewership was spotty at best because, now that Nathan is 18, he's kind of sort of taking care of himself, so I can go back and I can start watching all these shows again. So that's
Wait, you named your son Maven?
Nathan.
Oh, I thought you said Maven.
Are you kidding? I would never give him a worker name.
Anyway, yes. And also on that show is Dolph Ziggler versus John Morrison, CM Punk against Del Rio, Mark Henry and Big Show, and I think there's a Survivor Series elimination match in there too.
Yeah, there's Team Orton versus Team Barrett. I forget offhand who's on those or who's on each team. I think Hunico is on the heel team.
Orton's team is, I believe, Kofi Kingston, which is interesting considering they had feuded a couple years earlier. Mason Ryan. There's a name that nobody remembers.
As a baby.
And other people. And Barrett's team was Barrett, Hunico, Ziggler. I think Sin Cara was on the Orton team as well.
Okay.
So it's Orton and a bunch of job guys against Barrett and a bunch of guys that would end up, other than Hunico, would end up doing stuff in the future. Because I think, Cody's on that heel team.
Okay, so that had the potential to, kind of be good. There's some good workers in that match.
Yep, and we'll talk about that show either this coming week or next week.
So thanks very much for joining us for episode 10. We're so sorry that if you listen to this whole show, if you watched this event, by God, you're a wonderful person.
You deserve to get into the gates of heaven.
I'm going to go have another drink.
And we will talk to you next week at some point.
I'm out.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.